father used to share stories with us of his earliest years spent on the desert in southern Arizona in the small community of Superior. His and Beulah's father worked the copper mines there in the shadow of the Superstition Mountains. Their mother, also Beaulah, made the best of the harsh circumstances to make a home for their family of 3 boys, with little sister Beaulah always being a joy to her big brother. The family would spend summers in California following the fruit, along with thousands of other migrant pickers in the early 1930s to make extra money for the winter months. The older children would help pick, and young Beaulah, being only about 3 or 4, would sit on a blanket at her mother's feet and move along with the women down the long rows of grapes, oranges, or whatever happened to be in season. In 1932, the family finally moved to Tulare, California, and then on to a farm 4 miles outside of Porterville on Old Prospect Road, where they made their permanent home. Here, young Beaulah would finally be able to go to school and grow up safe, protected by her brothers, while learning to raise chickens and alfalfa on the farm. Dad always said his sister never gave up on anything and fought to protect her loved ones her entire life. She was such a great example of unconditional love and service. When Dad was about 14 and going to middle school at Bartlett Junior High in Porterville, he was known for being a local junior boxing club champ. Because of this, other boys would sometimes challenge him in an attempt to brag that they had beat him in a fight. Well, one day, Dad was walking home from school with Sis. A larger boy caught Dad by surprise, and they were soon in a brawl. Suddenly, Sis was jumping on top of the other boy, hitting him and yelling at him to get off her brother. Soon other kids were gathered around, cheering little Beaulah, who was apparently the victor that day, as the bully boy ran off home and away from those awful Reeves kids.
I read a story that my dad wrote about how he met my mother. My Uncle Curtis liked a girl who went to his church. Her name was Viva Blackburn, and her parents had a very strict code for dating. In fact, they would never consider allowing their daughter to go out on a date alone, especially with my uncle, who was a handsome sailor with a bit of a reputation for being a ladies' man. But this was a very special occasion, a military ball sponsored by the Porterville High School cadets, and everyone was going. Viva's parents relented only on the condition that this would be a double date. So Viva asked her best friend Beaulah to go. Her date would be a new member of their church by the name of Ardith Eggman. You see, my dad became a Mormon while serving as a Marine during World War II. He was baptized on the island of Guam in 1945 after U.S. forces took the island back from the Japanese. Needless to say, the date was a success, and my dad met the love of his life that night. Ultimately, they were married and sealed in the Salt Lake City Temple in August 1947, after which they returned to Porterville, where they would start a family and continue to build on a relationship that would span over 75 years.
Through her daily example, my mother taught me to give service to others with joy and love. As a youth, all stake activities were held in Bakersfield. My mom drove me and others to the stake dances. She even drove us to Salt Lake City for a dance festival. We must have driven her crazy, and she must have been exhausted. But she did it with a smile and a song.
As a child, your parents are just there, and we don't appreciate them because they're your parents. But then as you get older, you start to realize everything they do for you. My mom did so much for me as a person. She was the rock of the family, and I'm really going to miss her. I love her very much. Bye, Mom.
Everybody loved her. She was always friendly and helpful in nursing. Doctors loved her. She always had a joke for them, and they'd all laugh and have a good time. Yeah, she just always had a very positive attitude.
One thing I do need to say, if I was to pick something in particular about my grandmother, was her nursing career and what an impact that made on my life. I am now working in an emergency veterinary hospital as an animal nurse, and one of the things I remember about my grandmother and the things that people used to say about her when she retired was what a wonderful bedside manner she had, how much kindness and tenderness she had, and also about how everyone loved her.
I remember my grandmother's laugh. She would always tell me a joke. Every time I saw her, she always had a smile on her face, and laughter and happiness filled the room because of her.
My best memories of Grandma include two things: her laugh and her smile. Her smile would light up a room and make you feel welcome. She always seemed happy, and her laugh made you happy. It was loud, raspy, and genuine, and it was the best noise in the world. I will miss it, and her beautiful smile.
My Grandma Eggman was the best grandma. She was funny and loving and had the best laugh. And I'll never forget her voice and her hugs. She always made me feel so loved. I remember her wall of VHS movies and loved watching movies at her house. She will be greatly missed.
What can I say about Grandma? It was funny to watch her interact with people because she was so friendly and everyone around her was her friend. She could make conversation with anyone. They enjoyed her because she's fun. And I find that I'm like that. I talk to anybody, even if they think I'm crazy. I just talk to everyone, and I like to think that I have that part of Grandma in me. It's comforting because it's special. You know, she and I are the same.
My grandma passed away early this morning. I'll always remember what a kind and caring person she was. I'll never forget the time my sisters and I spent at my grandparents' house in Terabella as kids. We used to visit every morning and eat pancakes together while watching movies in the living room. She used to pick me up from school when I was sick, when nobody else could. I love my grandma, and I will miss her very much.
I lived with my grandparents from pretty much in the warehouse right after I was born, all the way up until I was 23 years old. I was always at one part of their property or another. And Grandma, she always had something, whether it be cookies or biscuits or pancakes or waffles. There was always something baking. And her biscuits and pancakes and orange juice that they always had for me was perfect.
I remember standing in my grandmother's kitchen when I was a little girl and watching her cook these big meals for the whole family, and she always had a huge smile on her face. I have a great love for cooking and baking, and I know that began with watching my grandma cook when I was a little girl. I wanted to be just like her.
Grandma was always the most amazing cook, but the thing that stands out the most for me in terms of her food was that time that we found all these amazing blackberries growing wild along a river at a family reunion. So I picked a bunch of them and I took them back to Grandma and I said, I really want to do something with these. They're so delicious. And she said, well, we're going to make a pie. And as soon as we got back to the farm, she brings me into her kitchen and just starts making a pie. She didn't look at a recipe card or a recipe book. She just knew it off the top of her head, and I got to help her, and it was amazing. It was the most delicious pie I've ever had in my entire life, and I have spent my adult years trying to recreate that pie with no success. So that will go down in history in my entire life as the best pie I've ever had and one of my favorite memories with my grandma.
My name is Rachel, and I have a bucket list. And number 56 on my bucket list is I want to learn how to make Grandma's recipe for biscuits. She listed 4 ingredients. 1, butter-flavored shortening. 2, self-rising flour. 3, buttermilk. And 4, the secret ingredient, a whole lot of love. And I felt the love. Everyone did. Fresh biscuits in the morning with freshly squeezed orange juice and pancakes or oatmeal for breakfast. I had the best childhood. I have the best grandparents. I had the best grandma. And I love her.
Grandma thought about everyone else before herself. She was always trying to help her family, her kids, her grandkids. And she went on trips, and she would take the grandkids with her. And, all over the United States with Grandma and Grandpa. And she was always there. And she gave nothing but love. I had the best grandma.
For the nearly 47 years that I knew Beaulah, she was vibrant, happy and loving. When Arvada and I had little disagreements, Beaulah would always take my side. How could I not love her?
Mother Beaulah was just the most wonderful person to me. When I came into the family, she embraced me and loved me like one of her own, and I will miss her very, very much.
I have so many fond memories of Beaulah. Her smile, her laughter, the way she loved her family and her church. She welcomed me into the family with open arms. I remember laughing at jokes she brought home from work, the wonderful holiday meals, and the trips to the bee conventions. But most of all, I will remember the love.
First time we traveled to Porterville for me to meet Mom and Dad, I was a little nervous. I wasn't sure what to expect. I wasn't sure if they'd like me. But as soon as I met them, all that nervousness went away. Mom and Dad took us around the farm. We walked through the orange groves, and surprisingly, Mom wanted to hold my hand. As we walked through the groves, she told me jokes. But it was funny because each time she laughed really hard. She had this wonderful laugh, wonderful smile. She was just so warm and loving and welcoming towards me. That's how I'll remember her always. We love you, Mom.
My grandma truly was a special, special woman. And it was very, very difficult to watch her come down with Alzheimer's and have somebody who was so integral and important in my life, and then to not have her. Alzheimer's is a hard thing because you literally watch your loved one die twice. So this has been really hard for me, but yet I'm joyous because I know that she's whole, and I know that she appreciates everything that my mother and my aunt and the other members of the family did to take care of her. And I just love her, and I just thank God that she was able to be a part of my life for the time that she was.